Alabama, in the deep South of the United States, is most famous for its role in the civil rights movement. Segregation was still in force in Alabama in the 1960s, and Dr. Martin Luther King and his supporters fought some of their toughest battles there. But at that time, Alabama was involved in another important chapter in history, the space program. Many rockets were launched from the NASA Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville. Ed Huckabee worked there, and we asked him about the astronauts.
Well, the early group, the Mercury astronauts, were ex-aviators, fighter pilots, test pilots. And interesting enough, they thought they were going to actually drive the spacecraft. Well, when they came here and they heard that they were going to be, quote, passengers in the spacecraft, and they would be basically passive, that was not a very happy day for them. And immediately they began to talk about, well, what about a control stick? How about a window, a periscope or something? And of course, the Mercury spacecraft had already been designed when these guys were selected, so they didn't really have much impact or require or get any changes in the Mercury spacecraft. However, if you look at the Gemini, it's got two pilots sitting side by side looking out a window. They have ejection seats. They have controls. That was caused by the influence of the astronauts. No question about that.
The space program was led by Dr. Wernher von Braun, a German scientist who had developed the V-2 rocket during the Second World War. Ed Huckabee knew him well.
One story I'll tell you that was really important to us in Huntsville, and that was when President Jack Kennedy, came to meet von Braun. That was a huge day for von Braun, for the city of Huntsville, and for NASA. This was in 1962, and you have to understand that we had only flown one flight, Alan Shepard, suborbital, 15 minutes downrange, and Jack Kennedy, 3 weeks later, came out and announced to the United States, we're going to the moon. We're going to the moon within this decade, and we're going to kick the Russians' butt in space. He made that commitment with only a 15-minute flight under our belt. And immediately, people in Washington began to ask him questions. Are you really going to be able to do this? And so forth and so on. And he was not getting any answers from the NASA people in Washington. So he came to Huntsville. He was here for almost an entire day. He came specifically to see that rocket test firing, which we provided for him. He wanted to see the Saturn and the moon rocket being designed, which it was being designed at that time. He saw the little Saturn, saw it fire, and one of the things he asked Dr. von Braun immediately after that firing was, Dr. von Braun, are we going to be able to beat the Russians to the moon? And Dr. von Braun said, yes, Mr. President, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it within the time frame you set.
Von Braun died in 1977. As you know, John F. Kennedy was assassinated in 1963.
I firmly believe this now. If Kennedy had lived and had been elected to the second term, he would have committed us to go to Mars, because von Braun had the plan already laid out, designed with the nuclear upper stage on the moon rocket, and it was all developed, all figured out, and all he needed was a commitment. And if Kennedy had lived, a lot of people believe we would have done that. We would have done that by 1982, 1983, we would have been on Mars.